From the earliest days I could remember, my father's words cut deeper than any physical wound. "You should have never been born," he spat one night, his eyes burning with anger that I could never understand. I was only 10, yet those words became the shadow I carried everywhere, shaping my self-esteem and confidence. My mother tried to console me, but she could not undo the damage of a father who resented my very existence. I often wondered why he blamed me for things I hadn't done, why his expectations were impossible to reach. School offered a brief escape, though the ridicule of peers sometimes mirrored my father's cruelty. I buried myself in books, finding solace in worlds where worth was not measured by birthright. Every day, I promised myself I would prove my value, not to him, but to myself. Yet the fear of never being enough lingered, a constant companion. And as I grew older, that fear transformed into determination, burning quietly beneath the surface. I vowed that one day, he would see what he had never appreciated. Teenage years brought rebellion and self-discovery, yet my father's shadow remained. He refused to attend my school events, sneered at my achievements, and mocked any dream I dared to express. Friends noticed, but few understood the silent wars I fought at home. I worked odd jobs, saving money to escape the constant judgment. The nights were hardest, lying in bed listening to him criticize my mother and, by extension, me. But I discovered something powerful: resilience. Every insult, every dismissal, only fueled my ambition. I spent hours honing skills, reading stories of people who overcame impossible odds. Sports, writing, music, each became a refuge, a reminder that my life had meaning beyond his words. By 16, I was earning scholarships and accolades, yet his approval remained elusive. Still, I realized the greatest revenge would not be hatred, but success. And so, I pressed on, quietly, determinedly, shaping a life that he could never diminish. College was a battleground of independence. Freed from the oppressive gaze of my father, I finally felt space to grow, yet his letters and calls remained venomous. He warned me against ambition, mocked my friends, and questioned every decision. At first, I faltered, second-guessing myself, but soon I recognized a vital truth: my self-worth was mine alone. I threw myself into studies, earning recognition from professors and peers alike. Scholarships, awards, and leadership roles became my armor, each achievement a silent declaration: I mattered. But despite the accolades, there was an emptiness. The father who should have guided and nurtured me had chosen contempt instead. I decided that I would create my own legacy, one built on compassion, intelligence, and integrity. I volunteered, mentored younger students, and helped my community thrive. Slowly, I realized that proving myself to the world was far more important than proving myself to him. Yet, deep down, a lingering question remained: would he ever see what I had become? Years passed, and I carved a life I was proud of, though my father's shadow never fully vanished. Career milestones, recognition, and even love could not erase the memory of his harsh words. Still, I learned a remarkable lesson: the validation we seek from toxic people often costs us our peace. I focused on building a life filled with meaning, surrounded by people who valued me for who I truly was. I traveled, explored ideas, and challenged myself beyond the limitations he had imposed. Friends and colleagues admired my work ethic and integrity, though few knew the pain I carried from home. At 25, I returned briefly, expecting little, and encountered a father who had aged, his health declining, his arrogance tempered only by weakness. The roles were beginning to shift. I realized then that life had a strange way of balancing scales. It was no longer about anger, it was about showing him, without cruelty, that I had thrived despite his hatred. When the call came that my father was on his deathbed, my emotions were tangled in a knot. Anger, fear, pity, and the desire to confront him all clashed within me. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and inevitability. Machines beeped softly, counting down moments I had once thought infinite. He barely recognized me, his eyes clouded with illness and perhaps regret. For a moment, I saw the boy he had once been, a fragile human beneath the harsh exterior. Memories flooded back, his words, his anger, his disdain, but also flashes of my own journey, every step that had defied his predictions. I realized that the opportunity was not revenge, but revelation. I would not scream or argue. I would simply let my life speak, demonstrating the person I had become. Sitting by his bedside, I reflected on the irony. The child he wished had never been born had flourished beyond his imagination. He whispered my name, feeble and raspy, yet I felt the weight of years between us shrink. I never understood you, he murmured, his eyes moist with a vulnerability I had rarely seen. I nodded silently, understanding that confrontation would serve no purpose now. Instead, I recounted quietly the milestones of my life, not to boast, but to let him grasp the strength he had tried to crush. Each story, graduation, career successes, helping others, was a testament to resilience born of adversity. He tried to smile, a flicker of pride buried beneath layers of regret. I realized that I had already won, not by making him feel small, but by living fully, unshackled by his judgments. The silence in the room carried the weight of everything left unsaid for decades. My father reached for my hand, trembling, a silent plea for connection he had denied for years. I held it gently, feeling the fragile human beneath the tyrant. In that moment, forgiveness was not about him, it was about freeing myself. The next hours were slow, the rhythm of the monitors punctuating the fragile peace between us. He whispered stories of his own childhood, mistakes made, choices regretted, words spoken in anger that could never be taken back. I listened, understanding that humans often falter, and that cruelty is sometimes born of pain rather than malice. My presence seemed to soothe him, though I could feel the inevitability of the end drawing near. I realized then that life was not about proving someone wrong, but proving yourself right. The man who once told me I should not exist was now quietly acknowledging the impact of my life. I shared memories of laughter, of small triumphs, of people whose lives I had touched. Tears fell silently, bridging decades of resentment, not erasing it, but softening it. I understood that my journey had always been mine to claim, and this was the final affirmation. As the day faded into night, his breaths grew shallow, each one a fragile whisper. He held my hand tightly, as if trying to absorb every ounce of life and strength I had become. I spoke softly, assuring him that his judgment no longer mattered, that I had lived, loved, and thrived. The room was filled with a strange serenity, a quiet acknowledgement of shared humanity and missed opportunities. I saw in his eyes a fleeting clarity, a recognition of the child he had failed to nurture, and yet, perhaps, a glimmer of respect for the person I had become despite him. In those final moments, I realized that the weight of years had lifted, not because he changed, but because I had. His last breath was a quiet sigh, and I felt both sorrow and relief. The man who once cursed my existence had finally left, leaving me whole and unbroken. I understood then that the greatest victory was survival, growth, and the unyielding pursuit of self-worth. In the days that followed, I reflected on the tumultuous journey with clarity. Anger had once been my companion, but it had transformed into resilience. The absence of his approval had become a catalyst for achievement, a force that propelled me forward. I honored his memory, not by mourning, but by celebrating the life I had built against the odds. Friends and loved ones saw only the accomplishments, unaware of the quiet battles waged within. Yet I carried them as a testament to human strength, proof that adversity does not define destiny. Every decision, every triumph, was a declaration that life could flourish even under the shadow of cruelty. I had proven to the world, and silently to him, that existence itself is a gift to be honored. And in this revelation I found peace, freedom, and an unshakable sense of self-worth. Looking back, I realized the power of resilience and determination. My father's words, once sharp and destructive, had inadvertently fueled the fire within me. I became someone he could never have imagined, a testament to human endurance and the strength of the spirit. Life's trials taught me that our worth is not dictated by the judgments of others, but by the courage to persevere. I found purpose in helping others who faced neglect, cruelty, or doubt, turning my pain into compassion. His absence no longer invoked bitterness, only a quiet understanding of human frailty. I had lived fully, loved deeply, and triumphed despite the shadows of my past. In the end, I proved the ultimate truth: I was meant to exist, to thrive, and to leave a mark upon the world. And that, more than anything, was the victory I carried forward, unshaken, unbroken, unstoppable.